Sincere thanks to Dr. Nagraj Desai for roping me into this entire thing. And first disclaimer is I'm not a biostatistician. I'm associate professor in community medicine. And I'll be speaking a bit on how to choose a proper biostatistics test. So most of the time, what we feel is this is a one. If I had one day left in life, I would live it in my statistics class. It is nothing to do with the passion with statistics. Most of us, the doctors, feel like this. Much longer. If we say that I'm going to make the things a bit more simple by, giving some tips for this particular statistics in next, say, half an hour, say 20 minutes to 30 minutes, sometimes people will be really surprised. And all of us think that statistics is a very hard nut to crack. And if I say that I'm going to make it very, very simple, so people will start thinking about me. So I cannot make it banana. So what I can make is, make it a bit crispy so that all of us can enjoy it a bit. The reason why most of the researchers in medicine show a bit less orientation towards biostatistics is, I'm joining medicine for the reason that I don't like mathematics. This is what we usually hear. But if we give this statistics, a biostatistics, a kind of an attention which is required, we are going to achieve great things in it. So what I'm going to do now in next 20 minutes is, we are going to just see what are all different biostatistical tests available and what kind of tests have to be used. There are a few previous speakers yesterday and day before, they have already told about what are the different parametric and non-parametric tests of significance. I'm not going to tell anything in detail. What I'm going to do now is, I'm just going to revise the things which have already been done. And I'm just going to give a few examples where these tests are used in my studies in which I am involved in. Whenever I'm applying biostatistics, biostatistical tests, I ask myself few important questions. The number objectives of my study. Number 2, am I planning to prove or test any hypothesis? Number 3, is a statistical test really required? Sometimes students come to us and say they just get the descriptive data and they say, sir, I want a p-value out of it. And no groups and there's no comparison, nothing. They just do a descriptive analysis and they will come and say, sir, I want a p-value for this. First, we need to think whether biostatistical test is really required or not. And am I clear on how my results are going to look at the end of analysis? This intuition is very much important for any of the researcher who is going to work in future. How my result is going to look like at the end of my research. This kind of an intuition. Usually when we give dissertation to our students, I think it can be practiced there also in cardiology. If we give dissertation to the students, by the time the students come out with their forma, we tell them to do the dummy tables. Dummy tables are the one where everything is the tabular form, there is no data inside. So if we do like that, if we give that kind of an intuition, then we'll come to know what kind of analysis I'm going to do and how my final result looks like. 3 important prerequisites for choosing a statistical test. What
can you speak into the mic, please, because the voice seems to be unclear for some people.
Is that okay now?
Yes, it's perfect. Yeah.
Thank you. 3 important things that we need to remember when you are choosing a biostatistics test. One is, what type of data I have. Is it a qualitative data, quantitative data, numeric data, whether it is a ordinal data, nominal data, what type of data do we have, and how many groups are there, and what is the purpose of study. Sometimes people come to analysis, they don't have different groups, they have a single group and they come and say, I want this is for this, I want p-value for this, I want correlation for regression for this, 101 things. Most important thing that we need to remember is whether there are groups. And if there are groups, what do you want to compare between those groups? And most important thing is, what is the purpose of my study? These are few of the tests of significance, I think, which have been already described by many. So I'm not going to deal with what are different these tests, when I'm going to apply it. But most important thing I'm going to do now is, I'm just giving some examples where these tests are applied. What assumptions have to be kept in mind when we are testing these tests of significance? One important thing I want to tell everyone, is we need to first find out whether our data is qualitative or quantitative. Second thing is, if your data is quantitative, whether my data follows normal distribution or not. If my data follows normal distribution, I'm going to call it as a parametric data. If my data doesn't follow normal distribution, I want to call it a data. How do I say that whether my data follows normal distribution or not? A simple thing is to do a histogram. And if sometimes histogram is also going to be difficult, one rule of thumb that everyone should remember is, for a data to follow normal distribution, standard deviation should be less than half of mean. To call a data to be normally distributed, the standard deviation should be less than half of mean. Then we call the data is normally distributed. If it is not, we call it as a non-normally distributed data or a non-parametric data. Okay? So these are few of the parametric and non-parametric tests of significance. We'll see one by one so that I can tell you when these tests have to be used. Data is qualitative. If you test difference between two proportions, the test we are going to use is Z-test. Data is qualitative, which is measured in terms of percentage. For example, percentage of males having myocardial infarction versus percentage of females having myocardial infarction. You want to say that myocardial infarction is more common among males compared to females, and you want to test it statistically, then the test of significance you are going to use to compare between these two percentages is Z-test. Let me give this example. So here what we did was, we gave some educational intervention on dengue and its prevention. And in pre-test, we had few percentage of people who gave responses, and post-test, the same question was asked and same responses have been observed. If you look at this, pre-test, dengue is a preventable disease was mentioned by 52.4% of subjects. And in the post-test, it has raised to 91.6%. Obviously, by looking at it, I can say that there is a difference. Is this difference statistically significant? I need to compare 91.6 against 52.4. This is a qualitative data, and we are comparing the percentages. In these kind of conditions, we are going to apply what is called as Z-test or Z-test. When you are dealing with categorical data is, you have 4 categories of people having a particular phenomena. For example, mild, moderate, severe hypertriglyceridemia. It is a person having hypertriglyceridemia, not having triglyceridemia. Myocardial infarction, no myocardial infarction. You are comparing 2 different categories or 3 different categories, and you want to find out whether there is any association between these categories. Test the associations. Important test you are going to use, and the commonest test all of us use is chi-square test. Some people pronounce it as chi-square test, which is wrong. Some people pronounce it as chi-square test also. That is too much a rude thing to call it as. Best thing is to call it as chi-square test. Important thing, please remember, if your data is qualitative, categorical, have divided data into different categories, and you want to check whether there is any association, we are going to use chi-square test. Just look at this particular table. Here we have divided BMI into normal, thin, and overweight. This is the categorization of BMI. And we have categorized some specific socio-demographic characteristics of study subject. This was a study done in school children, and it is published in International Journal of Preventive Medicine. So we have categories against categories, trying to find out whether there is any association between gender and BMI categories, age and BMI categories. I am going to apply chi-square test, and it is showing statistical significance. What I am inferring at the end of the day, there is a significant association between BMI and gender, BMI and locality. Okay, so this is how I'm going to tell the association. Sometimes people call this kind of a relation as a correlation. Sir, I want to find out relationship between gender and BMI category. Wrong. Association is for the qualitative parameters. Correlation is for the quantitative parameters. We'll discuss about what is this correlation a bit. If you could just keep an eye on this particular table, here we have tried to find out whether there is any association between the hypertensive status, which is again a categorical variable, and the gender, which is again a categorical variable. We want to test whether there is any association between both of them, and we apply chi-square test, and we say whether this association is statistically significant or not. When your data is quantitative and your data is measured in terms of mean and standard deviation, we have a different set of tests for it. We will discuss what are these different type of tests. I have just given this table sometime when the data could be of independent groups or data can be dependent on each other. For example, I want to test the length of small intestine between independent groups, males and females. We call it as unpaired observations. And sometimes we do the paired observation before and after a particular intervention. Let us take this example first. Unless stated otherwise, the t-test means independent sample t-test. When are we going to use independent sample t-test? Number one, your data should be quantitative. It should be measured in terms of mean and standard deviation. And your data should be parametric. What is parametric? Your standard deviation should be less than half of mean. And you should have two mutually exclusive independent groups, male, female, urban, rural, hypertensive, non-hypertensive, mutually exclusive. There should not be a single person who is common between both these groups. Then you are going to apply unpaired t-test. Take this example. We have few children, babies with neonatal sepsis, we call them as cases. Babies without neonatal sepsis, we call them as controls. Are they independent groups? Yes. There cannot be someone who is both case and a control. Second, are there two groups? These are the two groups. What is our data? Our data is quantitative in nature because uric acid is measured as a quantity. Is it measured in terms of mean and standard deviation? Yes, it is measured in terms of mean and standard deviation. The one which is on the left side of your plus or minus is mean, on the right side is standard deviation, right? And is this data normally distributed? Just have a look at it. The standard deviation 1.06 is less than half of 3.7. Yes or no? Then the test we are going to apply is unpaired t-test or independent sample t-test. And the difference what we observed here is statistically significant. Whatever difference you observed in MDA levels between cases and controls is statistically significant. The second one, sometime you are going to measure before and after. Same person is measured twice, before the intervention or after the intervention. Simple example is heart rate of a person before TMT and after TMT. Blood pressure, systolic blood pressure of a person before TMT and after TMT. When are you going to use paired t-test? Number one, your data should be quantitative. It is measured in terms of mean and standard deviation. And your data should be parametric, less than half of mean, standard deviation. And the variable should be dependent on each other. And then we are going to use paired t-test. Just look at this particular table. We gave vitamin E supplement, we gave a comparison of serum copper levels of serum levels of MDA and nitrous oxide and vitamin A in RA patients before and after vitamin E supplementation. Baseline, we collected their mean samples. We gave vitamin A. After 12 weeks, we assessed whether there is any difference. So what is done here? This is baseline data before on a same set of samples and after on same set of samples. Is this data quantitative? MDA, NO and vitamin A is quantitative data. Is it measured in terms of mean and standard deviation? Yes, measured in terms of mean and standard deviation. Is your standard deviation less than half of mean? Yes, it is less than half of mean. Are they paired observations? Yes, they are paired observations. What is the test I'm going to use? Paired t-test. Okay. So if the groups are independent, independent sample t-test. If the groups are dependent, we use paired t-test. This is something called, this usually we do. I was telling you when I was talking about unpaired t-test, there should be 2 groups. Sometimes there can be 3 groups. Sometimes there can be 4 groups. For example, you want to check the level of waist circumference or heart rate in 3 group of subjects, the subjects who are having resistant hypertension, normotensives, and people who are having non-resistant hypertension. There are 3 groups. If there are 3 groups or 4 groups or 5 groups, you want to compare a particular parameter, then the test we are going to use is ANOVA. It is not INOVA. ANOVA. People come and say, I'm applying INOVA. So, and when we ask them, expand ANOVA, they say, they struggle in expanding ANOVA. They have to, ANOVA is analysis of variance. We are measuring the variance within the groups and variance between the groups. The basic assumptions for ANOVA is, number 1, your data should be quantitative. Second, normally distributed. Number 3, there should be more than 2 independent groups. If there are 2 independent groups, you use independent sample t-test. More than 2 groups, you are going to use ANOVA. ANOVA is going to test whether there is a difference between these groups. Let me take this example, which is going to explain you well. So just have a look at it. Is our data quantitative? FBS is quantitative data, right? PPBS is quantitative data. HbA1c is quantitative data. And how many groups do we have? 3 groups. Normal, moderate, and severe diabetic patients. And is the data normally distributed? Look at the mean and standard deviation. Everywhere the standard deviation is less than half of mean. If you just consider a situation where you do not have this severe group at all, you have only normal and moderate, what is the test you are going to use? Independent sample t-test. But this new group has added here. So what we are going to use is ANOVA. ANOVA is going to tell us whether there is a difference between 3 groups, but it is not going to tell you which group is significantly contributing in this difference. To know that, we apply what is called as post hoc test. There are series of post hoc tests. The commonly used one are Bonferroni's test, Tukey's test, Shaffe's test. They are going to help, the statisticians are going to help you with that. And that post hoc test is going to tell you which group is contributing more to this significance. If you just look at this difference of FBS, so 174 is significantly different from these two, right? And we can easily make out, if you look at FBS in severe is significantly different from rest of the groups. 120, 130, 174. But we need to prove it statistically. For that, what we have to do is we have to apply post hoc test. Please remember, ANOVA has to be used when there are more than 2 groups. Your data is quantitative, normally distributed, and these 3 groups are mutually exclusive, right? You look at this example. We have measured quantitative data. There are more than 2 groups, and our data is measured expressed in terms of mean and standard deviation. And the data is normally distributed because the standard deviation is less than half of mean everywhere. And what is the test we are going to apply is ANOVA. Okay. If there are 2 groups, independent sample t-test. If there are more than 2 groups, ANOVA. As simple as that. Okay. Sometimes what happens is we measure a particular parameter repeatedly. When I was talking to you about this example, I told these 3 groups are mutually exclusive. I'll show you one more example. Are these 3 observations mutually exclusive? No. The data on 4th week depends on the parameter's value baseline. The data on 8th week depends on what is its observation in 4th week and baseline. The same data is measured more than 2 times. If it is only 2 times baseline and 4 weeks, which is a test we apply? Pair t-test, right? Before baseline, after 4 weeks, to before and after. But here one more thing has come. One more observation has come. This is the problem. If there are 3 groups, there are 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times observations we are going to do. and the same parameter is measured over those times. And what is a test we are going to use is just a modification in regular ANOVA. We call it as repeated measures ANOVA. Our papers get rejected for this reason. We would have applied ANOVA, we would have applied repeated measures ANOVA, and we would have just mentioned in our statistical analysis that I have applied ANOVA. People will ask you, what type of ANOVA did you apply? Then we fail to explain it. Okay, so repeated measure ANOVA is when the observations are more than 2 times. Okay. There are non-parametric variants of this test, these tests. I was telling you, these are very fancy names, but I want you to just remember these names. Look at this table. In this table, we have 2 groups, and we have measured study skills of the students in government college and private college. Are they independent groups? Students studying in government college constitutes one group. Students studying in private college constitutes one group. Are they mutually exclusive? Yes. And the data we have taken is the scores. Are they quantitative? They are measured mean and standard deviation. 188.5 plus or minus 100.2. What is ideally the test we would have applied here? It would have been an unpaired t-test or independent sample t-test, because 2 groups measured in terms of mean and standard deviation. What is the problem here? Look at the deviation. Standard deviation is more than half of mean. Look at the standard deviation everywhere. 100.2 is more than half of 188.5. 101 is more than half of 177. Is this data normally distributed? No. At this point in time, when there are 2 independent groups, when your data is quantitative in nature, which is not following normal distribution, the test we are going to apply is a non-parametric variant of unpaired t-test, that is called Mann-Whitney's U-test. Okay, Mann-Whitney's, if your data is quantitative, measured in terms of mean and standard deviation, if your data follows normal distribution, apply t-test. If it doesn't follow normal distribution, that is standard deviation is more than half of mean, apply Mann-Whitney's U-test. Look at this example. This is something called before and after. Did I show somewhere this kind of a table before? I was telling you about pair t-test, right? Before and after, pre-test, post-test. These are few knowledge scores. If this is pre-test and post-test, before and after, one particular parameter, which is a test we use, pair t-test, right? So what is the problem here? Look at the standard deviation. If you look at the standard deviation is more than half of mean. I cannot apply pair t-test here. I have to apply non-parametric variant of pair t-test, that is called as Wilcoxon sign rank test. Clear? If your data is quantitative, measured in terms of mean and standard deviation, if it follows normal distribution, apply pair t-test. If it doesn't follow normal distribution, apply non-parametric variant of it. It is called as a Wilcoxon signed rank test. What is left now? We finished unpaired t-test and its non-parametric variant, that is Mann-Whitney's U-test. We finished pair t-test, its non-parametric variant is Wilcoxon signed rank test. What is left is ANOVA, right? Non-parametric variant of ANOVA is called as Kruskal-Wallis test. Here number of groups are 3 and our data does not follow normal distribution. Please remember, if your data does not follow normal distribution, do not put it as mean and standard deviation. Just for the sake of example, I have put it here. If your data is not following normal distribution, please put it like this as a median and interquartile range. If you do that, you are going to get your p-value. Kruskal-Wallis test is applied when you have more than 2 groups. When you measure the quantitative data and your data does not follow normal distribution. we apply Kruskal-Wallis t-test. Kruskal-Wallis test. Let me summarize. I'll take another 2 or 3 minutes of your time. Did I overshoot? Do I have some time, sir? Another 2-3 minutes? Yeah, thank you. So to summarize, number 1, look at your data. Quantitative. My data is quantitative. How many groups do I have? I have 2 groups. Check at mean and standard deviation. My standard deviation is less than half of mean. I have my data is parametric. I have 2 groups which are independent of each other. Independent sample t-test or unpaired t-test. I have 2 groups which are dependent on each other before and after. My data is quantitative, parametric, paired t-test. I have more than 2 groups. Quantitative data, more than 2 groups. Data follows normal distribution, ANOVA. I have 2 groups. Data is measured in terms of mean and standard deviation, quantitative data. Data does not follow normal distribution because my standard deviation is more than half of the mean. At that point in time, I cannot apply unpaired t-test. What is the test I need to apply? Mann-Whitney's U-test. My data are paired observations before and after, and my data is normally distributed. The test I am going to apply is paired t-test. If my data is not normally distributed, I need to apply Wilcoxon signed rank test. Next thing is I have 3 groups. Data is normally distributed, measured in terms of mean and standard deviation, ANOVA. If it is not normally distributed, go for Kruskal-Wallis test. These are the tests which we are going to choose when we have different type of data. Another important thing I want to I have 2 more slides to finish. Correlation. Please, for God's sake, do not use the term correlation when your data is qualitative. Correlation is something when one parameter increases, whether other parameter increases or decreases. Like as the height increases, whether BMI increases or decreases. Both the parameters in your X and Y axis should be quantitative. One side you cannot put myocardial infarction present, absent, and other side you cannot put weight and you measure the correlation. That can never happen. If you look at the examples in classical papers, both the X and Y axis should be quantitative in nature. Weight against BMI, weight against hip circumference, systolic blood pressure against weight, diastolic blood pressure against weight. Both the parameters should be quantitative in nature. If these quantitative parameters are normally distributed, less than half of mean, please remember this is that is lesson from the day, less than half of the mean, parametric correlation. We call it as Pearson's correlation. If the data is non-normally distributed, Spearman's correlation. Usually this is something like this: height of a patient against weight of a patient. Both are quantitative. If both are quantitative, you need to apply correlation. If one among them is qualitative, for example, weight of a patient against smoking status or myocardial infarction. Myocardial infarction, weight is measured in terms of mean and standard deviation. Mean and standard deviation weight, myocardial infarction, no myocardial infarction. 2 independent groups. Weight is measured in terms of mean and standard deviation, and your data follows normal distribution. What is the test you want to apply? Unpaired t-test, not the correlation. Correlation is only when you are both dependent and independent variables are quantitative in nature. Okay, so this shows positive correlation. This shows negative correlation, that we are what we call as correlation coefficient. Okay, so it can range somewhere from -1 to +1 with 0 at the center. Okay, so I think a day before yesterday there was a session on correlation and regression. I was very keen in listening to that session. It was a wonderful session taken by one of the very, very distinguished panelists. And he explained all these things so well. I was really, really, impressed by the way it was explained. It could be either positive or negative, or there is no correlation. Your line remains flat. Correlation ranges from -1 to +1. -1 to 0 is called as negative correlation. 0 to 1 is called as positive correlation. And in negative correlation and positive correlation, there are again different grades. Strong positive correlation, moderate positive correlation, weak positive correlation, based on your R values. I think it was explained on day 1. +1 means perfect positive correlation. If you look at this, this is almost near to 1, perfect positive correlation. As the height increases, weight increases, something like that. It's a hypothetical data. If you look at it, there is a decline. As the age increases, glomerular filtration rate decreases. Both are measured in terms of quantitative parameters. And this is no correlation. The total cholesterol and age. In this study, there is no correlation. But there can be correlations in some other studies. But the study in which we have chosen, there is no correlation. Regression constitutes my last slide. Lot of people, yeah, you want something? Yeah. Regression has become a fashion. I want to apply regression for everything. Regression has to be applied only when you are predicting something. You will be seeing a lot of COVID models coming now, right? They say by May 21, entire COVID is going to get vanished off from India. From where all these models come, they're all regression models. If you want to predict something, if you want to predict the age of mortality of a person who is having hypertension at the age of 30 years, we are going to use regression models. Regression is basically going to predict what is going to be the outcome following some specific independent variables are put together. A simple regression equation is, people who work in pediatrics, people will usually predict the weight for age. What is the weight for 3 years of age? There is a simple formula, age into 2 plus 8. Age into 2 plus 8 is a formula to predict weight of a child at a particular age. How this formula came? That formula is the outcome of a regression. How at 18th hour of a match, the cricketers are going to predict what is going to be the projected score. That is through the regression equation. Regression is going to tell us the prediction of outcome using some independent variables. Being a person a smoker, an alcoholic, having hypertriglyceridemia, with 30 years of age, what is the chances of him developing myocardial infarction at 60th year of age? That is going to be given by regression. If you are predicting linear parameters, you call it as a linear regression. For example, given only the weight of a particular child, how you are going to predict the height of a particular child, it is a linear regression. Okay, sometimes it could be logistic regression. When your data doesn't follow normal distribution, when you have a mix of both qualitative and quantitative data, you have logistic regression. Okay? So it's a big C. I just wanted to tell you when we are going to use it. The regression has to be used only when you want to predict something. Do not use regression left and right for the only reason that I need to give more strength to my statistical analysis. And most of the time, some papers will get rejected for the reason that regression has been used without any reason behind it. Okay, so these are a few of the things that I wanted to share. To summarize, if we have a qualitative data, you have two options. Either you can use Z-test or chi-square test. If you have quantitative data, you have a series of observations, series of options. When your data is normally distributed, you call it as a parametric data. Your data is non-normally distributed, you call it as a non-parametric data. If you have two groups which are dependent on each other, paired t-test. If you have two groups which are not dependent on each other, unpaired t-test. Okay. If you have more than two groups, use ANOVA. Okay. Only when the data is normally distributed. When your data is non-normally distributed, if you have two groups, use Mann-Whitney test. Two groups dependent on each other, we unsigned test. More than 2 groups, Kruskal Wallis test. This ends my session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that applause. This is a bit difficult topic, but I try to squeeze everything in a very short span given to me, but I would be happy to answer them.
Chairpersons can take over, please. Thank you.
Am I audible? I had some problems.
Absolutely, sir.
You're audible. You're audible, sir.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Praveen Kulkarni. That was a rather exhaustive talk, but very, very clearly put forth what are the different types of tests. It's a very difficult topic which you have covered very, very well. There's a lot of data there, and it'll be nice if you could share those slides with us, because I think it's a little too much for ordinary cardiologists to just assimilate it to one go. So I'm sure there'll be some questions. Where do I get that?
I'll be sharing the slides with Dr. Nagaraj Desai immediately after the session gets over.
All right, that'll be great.
There is no problem. You can use these slides.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. So how do I view?
Chat box.
Yeah, now, can you hear me?
Yes,
Can
sir.
you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, there was a question about how to or when to use Fisher's exact test. I think you didn't mention that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that question. The reason is, this is a big thing, so I try to think together. Fisher's exact test is a application in chi-square test. If your data is categorical, you want to test whether there is any association between these two qualitative categorical variables. We are going to use chi-square test. Let me go to this particular table. So where is a chi-square? Fantastic. Yeah, this is the chi-square table. If you see these observations are called as observed values. Okay, and with these observed values, we calculate what is called as expected frequencies. What is an expected frequency? This is my 1393 is an observed value. There is no association at all. Keeping my null hypothesis to be true, there is no association at all. That is my null hypothesis. Keeping that null hypothesis to be true, this P to be non-significant, what should have been the value here? This is called as an expected frequency. When we are manually calculating the chi-square test, we calculate expected frequency for each of these parts of the table blocks. If any of the block has got expected frequency less than 5, the chi-square test cannot be used. At that point in time, we have two options. One is to go for Yates correction and other is Fisher's exact probability test. Yates correction is not commonly used because it is just a modification in the formula. Instead, we do something called as Fisher's exact probability test. If you are using any type of a sophisticated statistics software, for example, SPSS, after this table, it is going to tell you at the bottom of the table, there are 10 blocks which are having expected frequency less than 5. Then it indicates that this chi-square test is not going to be used. Then you need to give the instruction to that particular software that please calculate Fisher's exact probability test for me, and it is going to give you in a fraction of a second. Use it. The one line answer is if the expected frequency in any of the cells is less than 5, you are going to use Fisher's exact probability test. And don't ask me how do you calculate expected frequency. It will be difficult for me to explain right now, but in many of the softwares, if you ask them to give it, they are going to give the expected frequency. And at the bottom of the table, they mention there are 10 blocks which are 10 cells which are having expected frequency less than 5. Then you need to automatically shift from chi-square test to Fisher's exact probability.
Thank you. I think Dr. Kiran?
Yeah, I think there's some comments saying that it is a super presentation. There's a lot to assimilate in that, but it was nice to know how to when to use the chi-square test, the Fisher's test, the parametric, non-parametric, how to differentiate between the two. This is all very new for most of us, and not to use the term correlation very loosely or inappropriately, which also we tend to do. And when we should do the paired test and unpaired test, and what kind of samples, when they're related or unrelated. There are a lot of useful points which were brought out, as I said, but probably a little too much to assimilate. And so we are looking forward to the slides. Thank you.